This is a campaign washstand from the second half of the 19th century, and for the most part it's a fairly standard design. There's a couple of unusual features about this one in particular which I'll come on to later, but this form of washstand would have been an essential piece of kit for most army officers in the second half of the 19th century. And a lot of the different makers retailed them, from Army and Navy Store and Harrods to other manufacturers, J.W. Allen, John Pound, etc., etc. And it was, as I said, a fairly standard design and essential piece of kit that most of them would have had. This example is probably around about 1860. The bowl is not original to it, but originally it would have had a bowl like this. And of course, for modern use now, just to have a bowl makes it that little bit more practical. You can use it in a hallway to put your hats or gloves or keys or whatever you want to do. Gives it an extra use. I don't think many people are actually going to use it for washing anymore. So let's come in a little bit closer and explain to you how it all dismantles and what's unusual about this particular example. So it's made of 3 mahogany oval boards. The top 2 boards or shelves have got this brass gallery around the edge. It's not needed for the bottom shelf. Then you've got brass finials and brass feet, and you have got iron rods or standards to separate the shelves. Now, they are one of the unusual features. You do see them occasionally, but not often. More often than not, these are made of brass. And so why do they make them in cast iron, in wrought iron as well? Well, probably simply just to give a different price point, to give more choice to the buyer. Aside from the round cutout to take the bowl to the middle, you've also got these 2 cutouts. And originally these would have had dishes in. This one probably for soap. This one you might have used it to put your razor in, or flannel, or whatever. But of course, having all of these cutouts does make the top board a little bit weaker, and you can see that over its history it's had some splits which have been repaired at these weaker points. So the painted black iron standards or rods is one unusual feature. This is the other, this swing out rod here. And of course it is a towel rail. And it's quite useful for when you're washing, of course, just to be able to easily reach to get your towel when your face is covered in water. The rod is made to unscrew, so it'll also pack down nice and easily when you put it away. So let's move on to showing you how the whole dismantles. Now, I'm not going to take it all apart. I don't need to demonstrate how it works. It's a fairly simple but very practical design, and we see it in other bits of furniture as well, but we'll come to that in a minute. So you simply undo the finials, when you've done that, the top shelf can lift off. You can then undo the 4 standards. the iron rods, take the next shelf off, and on you go until it's all dismantled. And when it is dismantled, when you bought this washstand, you probably also would have bought an oval packing case for it. And that packing case, more often than not, would be a hip bath, a wooden hip bath that this would pack down and fit into. At the top of the hip bath might then also turn into a table. Again, different price points depending on what you wanted to pay, how much you wanted to get. You could get a hip bath which had a top with a screw-in plate to the underside, and then you'd have a tripod base and legs which would simply fit onto that to give you an extra piece of furniture. Now, as I said, this is a design of dismantling that was used on more than just washstands. And if we just move this aside, we can see this set of shelves, and if we turn it around, you'll see the finials away from the cresting rail, and you can imagine that this dismantles in exactly the same way, flat packs. Now, a more unusual piece of furniture which works to the same principles is this corner whatnot stand. We've had one whatnot stand before which works to this principle. These simply undo, again the boards come away, and it all breaks down into rods and boards to flat pack very, very easily. So a simple but very, very practical method for dismantling furniture. So to sum this up, this is a mahogany, iron and brass campaign washstand. It's going to be around about 1860 in date, but this design didn't change much for a number of years. You get some variation in the feet, a little bit of variation in the finials, and it was made for maybe approaching 50 years. Now, when you do buy a washstand or a whatnot, an oval whatnot especially, you've got to be very careful. Occasionally we will see a whatnot which looks exactly the same as a washstand, but of course it doesn't have a cutout to take a bowl or to take your dishes. And our first thought whenever we see one of those is, has one of the shelves been replaced? It was not uncommon for such washstands to be given a second lease of life, or to be made more practical by replacing the cutout shelf with a separate board. And the way you've got to check when you buy, just to make sure you know exactly what has gone on, is to compare the grain of the wood on the boards and to see if they match. And if one board is obviously a different wood, it really stands out from the others, you know there's a very, very good chance that it's been replaced. We think that they did make oval whatnots, but not many of them, original ones, I think, have survived. I think they probably weren't that common when they were first made, so maybe they didn't produce that many either. So that's a little point to always check when you're looking at buying an oval whatnot. Has one of the boards been replaced? So English, around about 1860 in date, campaign washstand, completely dismantles for travel, probably would have gone into a packing case which would have been oval hip bath with the top possibly also turning into a table, and an essential piece of travel equipment for an army officer in the second half of the 19th century.